It's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So I just thought I'm going to make this video because I just wanted to talk about this ridiculous situation concerning this man, Shabir. Um, can you believe it? I don't know if you've seen anything about this, but this is in the UK, in Britain, and this man is about to be released soon for terrible, terrible offences. Mainly um, heading a grooming gang that groomed young girls in the Rochdale area. Rochdale is near Manchester, in the north of England. And this man, he was found guilty, he's been in prison. He's a ringleader of a grooming gang and is about to be released from prison. And now the talk is he cannot be deported. And of course, people are calling for him to be deported. He should be deported, but he can't be because of legal loopholes. So, just to warn you, it's going to have we're going to be talking about disagreeable things. The ABUSC of children. I mean, not going into graphic details, obviously, but just the situation that happened. And yeah, why? Well, first of all, my question would be, why is he even being released? Because seems like his offences, to me, probably should have been kept in prison. But he is being released. Why was he not maybe deported to serve out his sentence in whatever country it is he comes from? Anyway, it's all to do with legal loopholes. It's to do with how long he's been in the UK. Um, and, again, as we've so often seen, you look at that face, you just see evil, don't you? You just see evil. But I bet he'll be married. He's probably a father, a grandfather, because he's 73 years old. What do his children, his grandchildren see when they look in that face? Do they see somebody more sort of sympathetic and nice when really we know that he is a monster? He is a monster. And he should be deported, as should anyone who's involved in these grooming gangs. If they're not from the UK, they should be deported. Now, one thing I just want to remind everybody of, because I don't like getting into a thing, it's not about, not all about sort of religion and race, etc. We've seen some terrible cases lately that I've covered on my channel. Probably the worst of which was the murder of little Preston Davy, who was murdered by his adoptive parents, who are British and white. And, as far as we know, I think one of them definitely is Catholic. So I don't want this getting into blaming religions for things and blaming people's ethnic background. There is, it has to be talked about someday. I don't know, talked about in a calm and measured way about how these kind of grooming gangs. Thing is, there's so many different kinds of child abuse. It's scary, really. You've got the systemic problems, in care homes, etc. That's sort of a bit of how that happened with Preston Davy, how children are taken off their biological parents because they're not thought to be fit to look after them, but then given to other people that don't seem to have been vetted very well, or certainly not in the case of Preston Davy. And of course, Preston was a baby who could not say anything to anybody about what was happening to it. Then, of course, you get people, you get children who, very sadly, it happens in their home with their biological parents, men and women. There are various. We can't blame it all on the grooming gangs. The grooming gangs is like one arm, if you like, of abuse against children in the UK and probably in most countries. I think what I've come to realise is that children's lives are cheap in our society. Literally, who cares about them? Because with the exception of Preston Davy, of course, because one of these horrible murderers has been given a whole life tariff, so you can't get a longer sentence than that. But quite often when these sort of cases, the actual perpetrators, they don't really get a very good sentence. I don't know what his sentence was. We'll find out when we look at the case. Is it taken even seriously enough, or do children even matter? So yeah, there's lots of different types. This is one particular type that we're going to look at, the grooming gangs, which is just as horrible, awful as all the others. How do they become established? How do they perpetrate the things they perpetrate? What sort of a society are we living in that a child could, think that it would be? Because I think in the beginning they get lured, don't they, by maybe younger, more attractive sort of men, and then of course once they're sort of in it up to their neck, those people start sort of passing them around, and then the child, at the end of the day, the child is the victim, and they realize they're in a sort of situation that they can't escape from. And the few that have been brave enough, to go to the police. It's very difficult to go to the police when you're 12 years old, or tell your parents even about what's happened to you, because the shame, and then they'll be telling them nobody would believe you, or we'll kill your family if you say anything. So it's just horrible. So this man, well, you can tell just by looking at him, he is a piece of shit, isn't he? And he was the ringleader, apparently. He was called Daddy. Ugh. It's like, get me a bucket. Look at the state of him. Good God. Disgusting. Anyway, apparently, this is the story that I'm outraged about, and I just want to share my outrage with you. The government cannot deport grooming gang ringleader. So there he is, Shabir Ahmed, the head of a gang which abused girls as young as 12 years old. So the ringleader of a notorious Rochdale grooming gang is set to be released from jail this week and cannot be deported, his victims have been told. Why did he not get attacked in prison? I wonder. Is he protected? Because they do say that there is how has he got through his prison sentence without being attacked? Other people, other child lovers have been attacked. Why has he not been attacked? Anyway, 73 years old, known to his victims as Daddy, had dual British Pakistani citizenship, but was stripped of the former following his conviction in 2012 for multiple counts of rape and sex offences against girls. So 2012, so he's about to be released soon. That's 14 years. Not much, is it? He's been stripped of his British citizenship, but they can't deport him, so what are they going to do with him? Anyway, documents shared online, reportedly from the probation service, to one of his victims, state that he will be released on Thursday. When was this? Has he already been? Oh, yesterday maybe. Because today's Friday. The Home Office said that Ahmed's crimes were appalling and that he would be subject to stringent licence conditions upon his release from prison. He must initially live in supervised accommodation 24/7 and will be subject to an exclusion zone centred on Rochdale. So imagine if you were one of his victims and you're walking down the street and you bump into him. The papers published online said Ahmed cannot be deported back to Pakistan due to provisions under the Immigration Act 1971. The Act says that because Ahmed arrived in the UK before 1973 and lived in the country for at least 5 years before his deportation was considered, his removal is barred. Well, do you know laws can be changed? Well, laws can be changed just like that. We've seen that happen. So, why can't this law be changed? I would say to you, I don't live in the UK, so I haven't got an MP. But please, 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 all of you, I know I've got a lot of followers from the UK. Maybe it's a time you should write to your MP and, express your disgust at this man not being deported after what he's done. And the thing is, these things, they do, believe it or not, it does make a difference. It does make a difference if you complain to your MP. That's what your MP is there for. I don't think people use their MPs enough. So following the news, one of the Rochdale gang's victims told how she has been left feeling scared for her safety. She was sex abused from the age of 12, and she told BBC Newsnight that Ahmed was well known in Rochdale, Oldham and Middleton. Even if he is not in these areas, he still knows people and could contact them, which makes me feel unsafe, she said. At the end of the trial, we were told they would all be deported once released, but not one of them has been deported. There are always false promises. That is it. There are always false promises. Oh God, these people get told anything, don't they, just to shut them up. And then it turns out they're all empty promises. In 2022, Andy Burnham, likely to succeed Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, called on the Conservative government to do everything within its power to deport members of grooming gangs. Well, let's see what he does when he gets into power, hey, if he gets into power. Because the thing is, all these people, when they're not in power, they say, oh, you should do this, you should do that, should do the other. Let's see what Andy Burnham does if he does get into power. Paul Waugh, MP for Rochdale, told the Daily Telegraph, the people of Rochdale want him booted out of the country, and it's simply unacceptable that the government of Pakistan are refusing to take him back. They don't want him in Pakistan. I think what they should do is probably fly him over to Pakistan, open the trapdoor on the way over there and just drop him into the sea if nobody wants him. If the Citizenship Act needs to be amended to do that, ministers should look at doing that. For 2 years, from early 2008, girls as young as 12 were plied with alcohol and drugs, gang RAPD'd in rooms above takeaway shops, and ferried to different flats in taxis where cash was paid to use the girls for sex. And Ahmed was described in court as a violent, hypocritical bully. At his trial, he called the judge a racist. Yeah, of course, everyone's a racist, aren't they? They're a racist, aren't they, Ahmed, when they call you out for what a twat you are. It's because they're racist, not because you really are a twat, of course. Bloody makes me so angry. They're always calling the racism card. Yeah, so he called the judge a racist and he took his case to the European Court of Human Rights. Sorry, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. Claiming he had not received a fair trial. He was jailed for 19 years in 2012. Well, that's quite a good sentence. So why is he being released now then? Am I? I'm not very good at maths, but he must be being released early. One of 9 men in the Rochdale grooming gang trial convicted of offences against 5 girls. Police said as many as 50 girls could have been victims of the gang, and that many of them had come from chaotic council estate backgrounds. Yeah, well, I come from a council estate background. And luckily for me, I suppose, I'm from a different generation. I think there is something that's got to be addressed there, not because people are from council estates, but where were these 12-year-old girls that were out and about? I don't know. There is sometimes a home problem as well with it, that they're maybe, I don't know, going out for attention or whatever they get. I'm not blaming the girls, but I do think at the end of the day, families have to be aware of where their children are when they're 12. Where are they? They shouldn't be just wandering the streets feral. Like, if they're not then being groomed, then maybe they're out there stabbing people or doing, taking rugs or, things like that. I do think sometimes there's a problem, that children are just allowed to sort of roam around freely. But you can't blame the families or the children, because the people who did it are these grooming gangs. But maybe this needs to be some education there. Judge Gerald Clifton said victims were treated as if they were worthless and beyond any respect because they were not part of the gang's community or religion. Yeah, that is certainly true that these men, they would not think of doing it to, people from their own community. I do think that is true. But the other thing that I just want to stress is, it doesn't mean say that all Muslims or all Pakistanis do these kind of things. We've got to be wary of tarring everybody with the same brush. But on the same token, if I was in that community, if I was part of that community, they should be angry as well at the reputation that these kind of men are giving their communities. It's not us giving them that reputation. It's it's these horrible people within their communities. Just like whatever community you're in, whatever culture you're in, when people make you look bad, your culture in general, it's like if everybody thinks British people are like the Benidorm Brigade, or if everyone thinks, here in Spain where I live, there's a lot, most of the crime in the area, or not the area where I live, but not far from where I live, is committed by Irish nationals, British nationals, Eastern Europeans, not Spanish people. So we've got to be wary. So they get a reputation. We get a reputation. I've been racially abused here in Spain. Would you call it racially abused or experienced xenophobia? I had an old lady shouting at me and saying that English people only come here to Spain to rape and murder. To me, she was really ranting, get back to your own country. That's happened to me a few times. So I think, we've got to be careful of doing that, tarring everyone with the same brush, blaming everyone for a section of their community. But then I do think the actual community itself has got to get angry with these people. They've got to turn around and educate within their culture and within their community not to do this. Greater Manchester Police said at the time there was no racial. There was no racial or cultural element to the crimes. Well, I don't believe that there is. A report later found the police had not acted despite multiple concerns being raised. It said there had been serious multiple failures by police and local authorities. Oi, oi. Sorry, that's my dog digging up the sofa. Hey. Ahmed's case follows a similar legal battle by two other gang members, Kari Abdul Rauf and Adil Khan. Both of them were stripped of their British citizenship in 2022 after fighting a long legal battle, which went all the way to the Court of Appeal. Both invoked their human rights under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to a private and family life to avoid deportation. Oh my God. So what about those girls' rights to not be violated or taken advantage of? Oh my God, it makes me so angry. Anyway, the Home Office has not said if either man has been deported or not. A Home Office spokesperson said deported. Believe me, I think that if the Home Office ever does manage to deport anyone, it'll be, they'll be full of it. Oh, look what we've done. We've deported this person. I think the fact that they haven't said that they've been deported probably means they haven't. A Home Office spokesperson said Ahmed's horrific crimes were at the heart of the grooming gang scandal that represents one of the darkest moments in our country's history. The most vulnerable people were abused and exploited at the hands of evil child rapists and must face the full force of the law. It said that Ahmed must sign the sex offenders register for life. They say that. I mean, I know it's a good thing. It's better than nothing, but it's hardly a great big. Do you know what I mean? Oh God! Oh shit! I've got to go and sign once a week, or however often they've got to go and sign. Ooh, big hardship, isn't it? Those girls have got to recover from the trauma for the rest of their lives. Any breach of his license conditions would result in him being immediately locked up. Anyway, this victim, who previously spoke about her abuse in 2024, said she was still getting failed by a broken system. I was 12 years old when this started and still getting failed, she said. 20 years on, things need to change. 20 years on. You do get the feeling that if after 20 years nothing's changed, because whenever people are in opposition, like now, Andy Burnham, it was saying he was having a go about it. What will he do if he gets into power? Nothing, probably. You've got to do something. There's no point in just complaining when the other party is in power and you're, just, whinging from the back. When you're in power, if you get the chance to be in power, you have to actually put your money where your mouth is. There has been no support for the victims of the abuse. The offender is being released from prison in less than 2 days. And yet, he'll get support. You can bank on it. Prisoners coming out of prison, they'll be, they get a lot of support, don't they? But there is no team of people in place, despite the government saying there would be a dedicated team for victims. So it hasn't happened. That has not been done. So that would have been the Conservative government. But now Labour's in power, they haven't done it either. These are broken victims because of a broken system. I am scared for my safety and my children's safety. Victims are left to fend for themselves because there is no support. So I just wanted to, he'd be out now, I expect. He'd be out. Watch out for this ugly face if you live anywhere in Rochdale or anywhere around there. Look out for his ugly face, because even if they banned him from Rochdale, you telling me he's not going to go back to Rochdale? That's where his family are and that. Of course he is. And he'll know people, as I say, they'll know people in that area. The victims will be terrified. 73-year-old man. Yeah, daddy. God, get me a bucket, get me a bucket. But anyway, look at this face. I want you to remember this face. You know, just avoid him at all costs. And if you are out there watching and you are part of the Pakistani community, you know, you need to do something about it as well. These sort of men, they're making people resentful towards you. Them who's doing it, I know, you know, I get that here in Spain quite often, especially since Brexit, more since Brexit. You know, people resent British people living in Spain, Spanish people, you know, because they think British people are all the same. So I know how that feels. So if you are part of that community, you've got to try and be different and, you know, get angry about it and get angry with them and let them know your community will not accept it. No, you can't accept, you cannot allow people like this Shabir to go around doing what they're doing. And you know what? You have to teach your sons that this is not acceptable. And just because girls are vulnerable, because maybe their family don't give a shit about them, doesn't give you the carte blanche then to go off grooming them and abusing them. Someone who's already vulnerable. Terror is horrible. It's horrible. It's always the people that are the most vulnerable that get abused, isn't it? Like Preston Davy, the ones that are in care already, you know, that come from a how can I put it, you know, not a broken home, but come from a difficult family background as it is, and then they're out there, they're vulnerable, they just want to be loved. Probably a lot of these girls, you know, these young girls are easily have their heads turned. They do. Young people in general, but offering money, alcohol, things like, you know, just and from what I can gather with these grooming gangs, I mean, you know, I don't know if he'd be able to sort of entice anybody away, but it's not. So they get the younger ones, the good-looking ones. They're the ones that make the first contact with the girls and that, and the girls perhaps are so desperate for attention. You know, they're just sort of roaming around not knowing what to do with their lives because their families are not up to the mark. So, you know, it's even worse because they're taking advantage of girls who are already vulnerable. It's disgusting. He's disgusting. And you know what? I'm not holding out any hope that he's going to be deported or the law's going to change. I just wanted to talk about it because it's one of those things that makes me really angry for many, many reasons that I think I've explained in this video. And anyway, I will let you know if there's any updates. Take care of yourself. And you know what? Yeah, if you've got young children, especially girls, but boys too, because boys are out there in gangs, you know, maybe not grooming gangs, but you've got to be careful. That age of 12, 13, 14, I think that is the scariest age, in my opinion, as someone who is a mother and has, you know, been through that, because teenagers, young teenagers, you know, they're influenced by their friends. So you might have a daughter who's the most best behaved daughter in the world, never done anything wrong. She might be loved and your family is perfect and great. She goes off out with one of her friends who's involved in one of these grooming gangs because she maybe is more vulnerable and has got, you know, because that's what they do then as well. They use the girls to entice other girls in. So you've always got to be aware, where is your teenage daughter? If she's under 16 or 18, you should know where she is at all times. She's still a child. It gets tougher when they get older because, you know, there's a limit what you can do with an 18-year-old because at the end of the day, they're classed as an adult. But, you know, children, girls of 12, 13, 14, they shouldn't be out and about without you knowing exactly where they are. And in this age of technology, you can do that. You know, you can put something on their phone to track them, which seems awful, but you're only doing it for their own protection. At the end of the day, while they're under 16 especially, they should be tracked, in my opinion. You should know where they are at all times. And I know it's difficult because sometimes they'll tell you, they're in one place and that's not where they are at all. It's not, listen, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying you can't just assume, because your daughter is very good, generally doesn't give you cheek, doesn't, oh no, my daughter doesn't take drugs, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink. You have no idea what she's doing when she leaves your front door, I'm afraid. You just don't. So, and then it's men like this that take advantage of them. Terrible. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Oh, don't forget to subscribe. Bye.